Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Welcome back to Spanish Lessons with Professor Jason. I'm glad you've joined me for Lesson 3 in my series on asking and answering basic questions in Spanish. If you haven't seen Lessons 1 or 2, I'd encourage you to go back and view those before we continue on since they sort of build on each other. Now in Lesson 1, I talk about what oral proficiency exams are and how they work and provide sort of an overview of the rest of the series. In Lesson 2, which I divided into 3 mini lessons, I explained how recognizing certain structural cues and questions can help us to better interpret what they mean and go about answering them more effectively and appropriately. In that lesson, Lesson 2, I also reviewed the interrogative pronouns or question words used in Spanish and went over a number of common formulaic questions and ways to answer them. So at this point, we're ready to start exploring questions and answers by topic, right? Just so you know, the remaining lessons in this series are a lot shorter than the first two. They go pretty quick. In Lesson 3, what we're going to focus on are questions used to elicit basic information about people, such as their names, ages, addresses, telephone numbers, etc. Okay, now before we get to those questions, let me just remind you what the other videos in this series are going to cover. You can see that beginning with this lesson, Lesson 3, we focus on questions relating to specific topics. I've ordered these topics in what I consider to be a natural and effective sequence that builds on itself, especially in terms of the grammatical complexity we're going to see, but of course, feel free to simply skip to whatever topic you'd like to view. So let's get started with our questions about basic personal information. I think it's time to go to the whiteboard. Okay, so what I want to do to present the questions, and I'll do this throughout the remainder of the series, is put them up using some sort of cards like this, like flashcards. That'll allow me to write down the answers and also show you some possible variations on each answer. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the question a little bit. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? What's your name? If you meet someone for the first time, you're going to ask them, ¿Cómo te llamas? Right? Notice that we have conjugated the verb llamar, and it's a reflexive form, so we might as well say we're dealing with the verb llamarse, literally to call oneself. How do you call yourself? Remember the principles that we're going to see throughout the series also of using the same verb in our answer, recycling any prepositions and things like that, and also staying in the same tense. So, ¿Cómo te llamas? What do you call yourself? What's your name? Are conjugations in the present tense. So I'm going to use the same verb. Of course, I'm always going to answer about myself if they're asking me about myself. Me llamo, and then the name, right? Entonces, me llamo Jason. Me llamo Ana. Me llamo Jorge, right? ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Ana. Me llamo Jorge, right? Since we're clearly, and the reflexive pronoun reiterates the fact that we're conjugating in the first person, we don't need to say the personal pronoun yo. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Jason. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Jorge. Okay? Let's move on to the next question about personal information. Same question, just put a different way. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? ¿Cuál es tu nombre? If it comes at us in this format, we can always respond in the same way we just did, right? Me llamo Jason. Me llamo Ana. Me llamo Jorge. Or I can sort of mimic that question structure more and say, mi nombre es. You can see how that question structure, the syntax, is much more similar in this answer. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Mi nombre es Jason. O mi nombre es Ana. O mi nombre es Jorge. This way sounds a little bit more formal. So for example, if someone's asking you to fill out a questionnaire or a form, you might see the question this way. ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Mi nombre es Ana. Mi nombre es Jorge. Okay? But it means the same as ¿Cómo te llamas? Right? You can answer them both the same way. If I want to ask someone where they're from, the question is ¿De dónde eres? ¿De dónde eres? Right? ¿De dónde eres? Notice the verb form eres, which is actually the verb ser, and the yo form of ser is soy, right? Notice also a preposition there. So those two things, verb ser, preposition de, are both going to be in our answer. Except I'm going to take the yo form here. Soy de California, por ejemplo. Not really. Oh, so that's a state, right? Soy de México. Soy de los Estados Unidos. A lot of people ask for where the U comes from. That's how you abbreviate in Spanish when you have two plurals, two words that are both plural. Estados Unidos, capital double E, capital W. Point is, we're going to use soy de, then the place. It could be a state, city, country, etc. ¿De dónde eres? Soy de México. ¿De dónde eres? Where are you from? Using the verb ser. Okay? Very common question. Let's move on to the next one in our series on personal information questions. Similar but different. Not quite the same information being asked. ¿Dónde vives? So, in contrast to where are you from, ¿Dónde vives is asking where do you live now? So our verb here is vivir, an IR verb. Here we have the to form, vives. Your form is going to be vivo. We're going to use the preposition en. Vivo en, let's say I live in LA. Vivo en Los Angeles. Vivo en Los Angeles. Or I can use a state, right? Or a province or whatever. Vivo en another city. Londres. Vivo en a country. Chile. Okay? ¿Dónde vives? Vivo en, and then the place. Very simple questions to answer. Okay? Let's look at another question about personal information that comes up a lot. ¿Cuántos años tienes? ¿Cuántos años tienes? How old are you? A couple things to notice here. The verb in the question is tener. We also have the word años, years, so we're going to include those in our answer, right? So, ¿cuántos años tienes? Come back with the yo form. Tengo, say you're 30, right? Tengo 30, and then that word for years. Tengo 30 años, right? Or if you're a little bit older, like me, tengo 40 años, right? And you can always add to most of these responses, ¿y tú? Right? To just turn the question back on the person asking it. ¿Y tú? If the relationship is slightly more formal. ¿Y usted? ¿Cuántos años tienes? Tengo 30 años, o tengo 25 años, o tengo 15 años. ¿Y tú? Tengo 40 años. ¿Y usted? Okay, so that's how we answer, how old are you? ¿Cuántos años tienes? Let's look at another question here in our series on personal information questions. Same question asked in a slightly different way. ¿Qué edad tienes? ¿Qué edad tienes? Right? So we're going to answer in the exact same way. ¿Qué edad tienes? Tengo 30 años. ¿Qué edad tienes? Exact same question as ¿cuántos años tienes? Right? So you just fill in your age here. Tengo 17 años, tengo 27, tengo 38, tengo 66. Important to know your numbers, of course, to answer this question. At least I would say 1 through 100. ¿Qué edad tienes? Or ¿cuántos años tienes? Same question. All right. One that involves dates and numbers. ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? Our interrogative here is when, right? ¿Cuándo? ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? ¿Cuándo es? Again, notice es, form of the verb ser, okay? Tu cumpleaños, so we have that possessive, right? The possessive adjective tu. So these elements are going to come back in one form or another in our question. That's kind of the point of this whole series. Look at verb tenses, the verb itself, other nouns that might be recyclable, right? What's the interrogative you're responding to? Are there adjectives, little pronouns, prepositions? All that stuff comes back in one form or another. ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? So we're going to take this to my birthday, mi cumpleaños, recycle the word cumpleaños, cumpleaños, es, that's where our form of the verb ser comes back, right? Mi cumpleaños es el 5 de abril. El 5 de abril. Okay, so el number de month. Okay, that's the formula for answering that particular question about dates. ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? Mi cumpleaños es el 5 de abril, right? If my birthday were May 14th, I would say mi cumpleaños es el 14 de mayo. Okay, es el 14 de mayo. Normally people aren't asking you to add, the year, whatever it may be. Okay, it's sufficient just to say the date. Es el 5 de abril, es el 14 de mayo, whatever your birthday might be. ¿Cuándo es tu cumpleaños? All right. What is your address, right? ¿Cuál es tu dirección? ¿Cuál es tu dirección? Okay. Again, you can take that tu, right? That possessive adjective, recycle it so it becomes mi. Recycle our noun here. Mi dirección. This is one very simple and formulaic way to answer it. Es, right? And then maybe calle, whatever it happens to be, we'll use a tree, street. Calle Elm, número, this is when you're saying it out loud, right? Número 650, or something like that, and then the city, right? Los Angeles, California. I don't know why I keep using LA as the example. Los Angeles, California. And then you add in the United States, your zip code, which in Spanish might be código postal, right? Código postal. Código postal. I don't know LA zip code, so I'll use a Missouri zip code, 65802. Okay, so this is how you might give your address in Spanish. ¿Cuál es tu dirección? Mi dirección es calle, name of the street, número, number, right? And then the city. Usually this would be too much information if you're just casual conversation, right? Okay, ¿cuál es tu dirección? Okay, name of the street, number, or you might say apartamento, número, and then whatever the number is, etc. Good thing about these videos is you can always rewind and watch something that I've already erased, right? Then the last personal information question I want to go over in this video is, similar to the previous one, but telephone number. ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? By the way, some of these that are more formulaic, I also go over in video lesson 2A of the same series, right? The one about the address, the telephone number, okay? I'm just repeating them here in this part on personal information. ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? Right? Again, we have the possessive adjective tu, we have a noun, teléfono, those are going to come back in our answer, right? Mi teléfono es, and then your number, right? Sometimes you'll hear a native speaker throw in the article el before a number like that. Mi teléfono es el, so 665-8015, right? Or I could say this as 665-8015. Lots of times students will ask me, what's the right way to sort of break up these numbers? And it doesn't really matter. Each city, each country, each region might do it differently, but the important thing is to say all the numbers, right? So it doesn't really matter if you say 665-8015, or you break it up this way, 665, right, 8015. That's really a minor detail. ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? Mi teléfono es el 665-8015, right? And of course, sometimes you'll sound a little bit robotic if you repeat or you recycle everything in the question. ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? Es el 665-8015. Okay? That's how we answer the question, ¿Cuál es tu teléfono? Okay. Okay, that concludes lesson 3 in my series on asking and answering questions in Spanish. Hope you found it to be informative and useful. Remember, you can always find more Professor Jason content right here or on my website, professorjason.com. You can also join my Facebook community or follow me on Twitter, and I'll put that information up on the screen here in just a minute. Thanks again for watching. Please feel free to watch the rest of the lessons in this series. This has been Professor Jason, your guide to Spanish. See you at the next lesson. Hasta pronto. Ciao.